Terry here from WorkTango. It's another Thursday, so another leadership training webinar for you, co-hosted with our friends at Culture Crafters. So I will turn it over to our friends there and hope you all enjoy the session. It's being recorded, and at the end of the session later today, I will email out a copy to you with more information as well.
Hello, welcome. I'm Anya, and I'm joined today with Angela. We do a lot of these webinars. If you have seen, we have recordings from the previous 3 weeks, and we will be referring to some of those webinars. So if you have never been with us, if you've never joined before, I'll invite you to go and check it out on WorkTango website, because we have talked about many different elements that we're kind of bringing it together today in emotional intelligence webinar. As with COVID-19, emotions are running high for all of our clients. So we wanted to create this.
Yes, well, that's so much easier if we didn't have emotions. Can we just take them out of the picture, right?
Totally, especially for us also as facilitators, right? We're also homeschooling our children and trying to organize everybody. And I have 3 kids at home, and I said, do not leave your room. We can't have any noise. It's being recorded. So guys, we're here with you, going through the same challenges like everybody else. I'm Anya Soto. I'm a co-founder of a company called Culture Crafters, where we help organizations craft their culture, basically. And emotional intelligence is one of those things. I find that we have so many people who can code, who can analyze, and who can have their shit together in meetings. They lose it, they jump out of meetings, they react, they don't want to work with each other. So all of those things are part of our culture. So this is what I bring to the table today.
And my name is Angela Migliaccio, and I am a consultant for Culture Crafters with long experience in all sorts of industry as a leadership facilitator and business coach. Prevalently strong experience in high tech. And so when it comes to emotions and emotional intelligence, I made the joke, wouldn't that be so much easier to take them out of the picture? And in a way we did. As a humanity, we created robots. So that's when we take that out of the equation, right? But for us as humans, we'll learn today how important they are. And for me, in my experience as a leader in corporate, is really there's a before knowing these things, knowing this intelligence, and then after. And I could, going back and look at my experience, I can really trace when I didn't have these tools and what happens and the consequences. And then when that EQ kind of raised and I gained that intelligence and a different way of responding to some situations. So we'll share this experience with you today.
I love it, because what you're bringing in, it's like there's a leadership development. I do believe emotional intelligence and the way we can respond versus react is a leadership competency. So both you and I, we have our personal life experience with emotions and professional. So, and hopefully we'll cover both of it today. Emotional intelligence, triggers and recovery. We love talking about it because businesses are led by human beings. Human beings are led by their emotions. This is what forms our actions, our strategies, our behaviors. And hopefully we'll make a case for you today why it's so important.
Yeah, and this really wide topic condensed in less than an hour was really challenging, but here's some key points that we're going to go over today. We're going to start with the why and why they're important, why this emotional intelligence is important, what kind of a role it plays in what you do every day. And then we'll share some tools on how to navigate those situations. We will use this term of navigation, which we particularly like. And then we'll go over what is this for? What is the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is, as humans, to raise that resilience, right? That threshold to being able to respond to these situations. And then, of course, as we mentioned, keep the questions coming, and then we'll leave some few minutes at the end as a Q&A.
Sounds good. Yay, Angela, do you want to talk, because you work with a lot of engineers and PhD, and you're in high tech, you know a lot about IQ and EQ, or lack of.
Right. And when we started putting these ideas together, Anya and I went immediately on one point, one key point that we want to make with you today. There's no good or bad. There's no IQ better than EQ or vice versa. And so with this idea of a teeter-totter, is the balance of the two. IQ got you where you are in the alcohol and gaming commission, in the county as an HR, in the medical imaging, right? So that IQ for sure got you to those abilities, got you to where you are today. And the way that EQ now comes in is really complementing those abilities so that in a society, in a community, right, you have those skills to be able to handle those relationships, stressful times like the ones that we're living today, and how to be able to support what you do every day for yourself and others.
And I think relationships, as you know, play a huge role in your success and in your fulfillment and your life. So it's like, what differentiates, right, good leaders from amazing, great leaders? It's emotional intelligence. It's how we talk to people. It's how we have our relationships. It's how we, like, do we have capacity for difficulties? Do we have capacity to have hard conversations and still have empathy and still be able to recover? What I see so often with our clients, and so like they take themselves out of the game. They're in a meeting, they don't like something, and they say, you know what, I'm out. I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to be part of this team. And they're losing, the organization is losing. That's why people leave organizations. They cannot handle feedback. They cannot handle failures. Okay,
so I'll let you, I know that we have something in the chat, Anya. I'll let you read that while we go the big why of why EQ. So as those things are coming in, these are all the decisions, the reasons why. And like Anya said, it's really important to be in those situations. And the way that we see it is EQ, emotional intelligence, is really the duality, the two dimensions. There's yourself, your own capacity, right, to focus, to be in that situation, to make the right decision, like you see here. And then there's the how to be with others, with their emotion, how to recognize them, how to help them regulate it, navigate them. So that gap that comes in to balance that teeter-totter is really being able to have this ability for yourself as a leader, as an individual contributor, to be in those situations, because that's where the best work and the peak performance and the creativity and being able to take a risk, right, and going for innovation and change comes from that emotional intelligence in balance with your cognitive intelligence.
I love the approach we're taking, right? It's like yes, and both of them are important. And especially with like attention capacity, right? For example, of course, in the training, we learn how do you master the skills when you get triggered. And we're going to talk a little bit about the brain. Like the belief, you can't function, you can't perform. We all know, we've all been in those places. It's not just you or me or that other guy. We all have been in those places. We cannot perform. We cannot be creative when we get hijacked. We're in a reaction, we're in the anger, and how do we navigate those emotions? And this slide is one of the arguments which we hear all the time from clients is, well, I'm not their therapist. Like, I don't want to talk about emotions. That's not my job. That's not why I was hired. So this is, we call it a money slide.
Yeah. And Heather, thank you for being so candid with that question. It is really when we are not used to be with that person and help that person see the meaning, see the why of things, then that's when we tend to go into that, please do what I ask, right? With that more of assertive way. So hopefully some of the tools that we'll share today will kind of help you understand what is behind that opposition that you get from the other person. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And also we will touch a little bit upon it. We only have 45 minutes today, but I really want to talk about like what's behind the emotions, like what is actually happening, like what's the language of emotions, because disappointment means unmet expectations. For example, so when I see that constant resentment or disappointment, what expectations are not being met for this person? Why is this person reacting in such a way? And as leaders, we need to develop capacity to read what's underneath, right? And as you said, it's
perfect segue for what's coming.
Is it? What's coming?
Yes,
I don't know what's coming.
What's underneath? There's a whole iceberg underneath that, this mountain under that surface. And while people and all of us tend to lead with that rationality of trying to understand and trying to reason, you really can go only so far with that cognitive ability. You really have to dig deeper into looking at the rest of the iceberg that is underwater, and really going with the feelings, understanding those emotions, understanding what are the emotions that sometimes are even hidden, like Anya was mentioning, and understand how to express those emotions so that they can move past that and come with you and meet you at the surface level.
And every time you think, well, that's not my job. We've talked about this before, into like when we have a webinar on one-on-one, as a leader or as a colleague. The thing is, if you don't address emotions, you will be dealing with gossip, toxicity, back channeling, people leaving your job. We spend so much time attracting talent, and then that talent doesn't have capacity to deal with other talent. Because, you know, especially when we're all talented, it's hard for us to work with each other.
Okay.
So we want to demystify some of the brain myths, and Angela loves neuroscience. We have
I do, and the reason why I do love neuroscience and cognitive abilities is because of really my strong left side of the brain. But here's what to understand. One key thing to understand, to go deeper under the depth of the water. So this comes from neuroscience. Dan Siegel is one of the lead researchers in neuroscience, and he has this explanation about understanding where emotions come from. And it's really easy to understand. I want to share it with you today very quickly. So if you take the palm of your hand, you can see my hand here, you put the thumb inside your palm, and then you close your fingers above it. This is your brain. This is really a representation of your brain right here. It's inside our skull. So this part, this is the stem of the brain, the very, very first part of the brain that developed. This part, the thumb, is the amygdala. That is our fight and flight or freeze response. This is what kept us alive and evolving for a million of years. Then you put this down. This is the cortex. This is the part of the brain you can see here, this layer, although it's not a layer, it's really a balance of it all. And then this part here is the prefrontal cortex. This is where that rationality comes from. When you're making your plans, your strategies, your budget reviews, this is where all that comes from. So what this means is that when this lid is up, and something happens that triggers those emotions, this part of the brain is off. It's really binary. This part of the brain is off because this part of the brain takes control. And until you manage that emotion and you navigate, here's that term again, that emotion, you really can't put the lid down and make your best thinking.
And also decisions, right? How often it affects our decision-making ability in the moment. So we all have been in those places. When something happens in the meeting, when something happens with the colleague, we have different reactions. So we want to ask you, and we're going to use the amygdala gets hijacked, right? You just feel like you're getting hijacked, you're getting triggered. What are some of your default behaviors? I want to ask you in the chat, put it in the chat. What is your go-to? I'm curious to see who is on a call today, because we all have developed over the years different reactions.
Defensive.
Yep.
Yeah. That's the fight or flight.
Defensive.
Shut down. Here's the freeze. Right. I absolutely shut down. Yeah.
What else, guys? What are some other, when we talk about navigating, right? So far, when when we are not well trained in these aspects, right? Most of these behaviors, they're subconscious. We just go into the reactive mode and they're subconscious. And for some people, as you said, some people get defensive, some people disengage, some people suppress, some people create conflict. They go into the fight mode and they look for that conflict. And again, how we are at work is how we are at home. It's all the same thing. It's like, what are some mechanisms that we have learned over the years?
So shutdown, very, very common. I can't hear what happens next. Absolutely, you go into that tunnel vision. That was our ancestors that had to run. The blood physically drains from the brain, goes into the limbs, because that's where in our evolution that made us run and get away from that situation.
And then
done with kindness. Oh, Jackie, yes. So you see those coping skills are coming for some of you already.
Surprise cannot process, right? That's the freeze. I need to regroup, like taken out of, like, I cannot just go in, I cannot function. I need a moment.
Yeah, very shaky, but I take myself, I remove myself from the situation. You know, you flee that situation and you go somewhere where you can think and be mindful about it and then maybe come back. Yes, those are all those coping mechanisms that are part of emotional intelligence. Excellent, thank you. If you have been in our webinars, you know, Anya and I particularly like metaphors because it's that bridge between the left and the right side of the brain. And so a metaphor is a way to understand how our brain, our cognitive neuroscience works, and neuroability is a concert. It's like having multiple instruments play in harmony. When that hijack happens, that triggering happens, then there's no coherence, there's no harmony, there's a dissonance. It's like listening to music, but all the players are playing on their own agenda, right? There's no director that creates that harmony. So we like this metaphor of the brain of how can we bring that harmony back? When the hijack happens, you may hear that boom, boom, boom of the brass or of the drums, right? That's how it feels, right? You lose the flutes and
the quiet voice inside.
Yeah.
It's really hard to hear. And also what happens now with the brain, right? If we thought before that there were layers of the brain, now with the orchestra, we see that our brain is actually a system. It's a system of systems. The new research now shows empathy. You have 9 parts of the brain included in empathy. It's not just one part. So it's not always reaction, right? It's like it actually has many, 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 many parts. And orchestra helps all of these parts to play together. That's how you know, right? When we talk about emotions.
So let's see, what are the ways to create some harmony, Anya?
Yeah. So we have created this model. It's a process that we teach in our trainings, how we develop leaders. The first step is awareness, right? We all know having the capacity to recognize a name and articulate what they are, because that's the problem. People don't know. They don't have the language. They don't have the emotional literacy. The next one, once you can articulate what is happening, you then have a choice, because this pause, what is happening? What am I feeling? Takes you from reaction to choice, a place of choice. Regulation happens is when you learn, how am I regulating? Here's my usual response. And as I said, some people suppress, some people use enhancers, some people use power and money, some people drug themselves with food. How am I regulating, and what are my subconscious reactions? Then we talk about recovery. As I said, how do we teach our leaders, ourselves, our employees, our colleagues, how do we recover faster so that we're not taken away for like 3 weeks? For 3 weeks, I can't even look at you because I'm so triggered by you. I don't want to be part of this team. I don't want to be in this project. We've all been in those places I want to see, or we have people who we see them in the meeting, they just disengage and they've left. And then the 5th one, of course, is resiliency. And the way we talk about resiliency is the more you master the skills, the more you practice the skills, you increase your threshold for similar situations. So we have to, in our trainings, to put you through different scenarios and help you master those skills and practice those skills so you can increase your threshold. What we say with regulation and recovery, for example, it's not that you will not get triggered. The more you practice, you will recognize it quicker. We shorten the time of recognition. You catch yourself much quicker, or your team. So those are the kind of like the steps and the 5 processes. Of course, in the webinar, I'm conscious of a time. We're already 20 minutes in, and there have been some logistics where we have to finish a little bit early. I want to ask you in the chat, put in the chat, which one of the steps do you struggle the most? Considering we all kind of go subconsciously through them, all 5, but if you had a choice, which one do you think will have the if you got really good at it, that will have the biggest impact on your emotional intelligence and your leadership capacity?
Yeah, and for some of you, you may, and we got a sense of that from the chat, you may be already to a certain point. You have had experience, you learned either by mistake or by your own research and education. You may be already at some point in this ladder. I like the idea of kind of incrementing, right, your ability to respond to those situations. And so let us know. Regulation, wow, recovery and regulation.
Regulation, yeah.
So I was spot on you may be already at some point here of level of awareness.
It's like it sounds like you have an awareness, you have emotional literacy.
Definitely. All right, great. We do have a practice for you when we go into regulation, and then there's a lot more. Of course, we can only share one today for sake of time, but there's many tools that we're aware of that can help you with that. Yeah. So let's start with the awareness very quickly, because we'll focus a little bit on regulation. Yeah, and recovery. So awareness is the first thing. And all I'm going to say here is, if you can name it, you can tame it. And so awareness starts really with that literacy and that recognition that Anya was talking about. Again, no good or bad. There's pleasant emotions and unpleasant emotions. Some are more comfortable than others. So here's something that you may have seen already in our webinar 2. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think 2, one-on-one.
Yeah. Webinar 2 about this classification of emotions. And we do have a really quick test for you if we have the time for that. Here we go. Of read these emotions quickly, right? And maybe, what are you today? What are you right now? Are you in a yellow and lively and optimistic, or maybe something happened at work on your personal life? Huh?
Maybe you're fuming today. Maybe you feel drained and tired. And I also want to say about pleasantness. As a leader, I would actually rather have someone in the red zone when they're speaking or they're expressing themselves, when we can be more productive, rather than disengaged in the blue. As Angela said, there's no good or bad. It's just when you can place them in your head in these 4 different quadrants and be like, where is this person? Where is that emotion, pleasantness, unpleasantness? And how can I take them? If they're in the red, I can bring them into the blue. If they're, let's say, in a green, I can take them to yellow. And we can play with it and regulate it here too.
I love people always give us challenges. Here's Megan. Can you be into different simultaneously, into different quadrants?
I think we move from one to another. And yeah, look, Angela, we talk a lot about, right, the yes and with especially now in this crisis mode, so many of us say, I'm so anxious, I'm so worried, and I'm so calm, and I'm actually like so slow, right? The paradox. Can we be? Yes, we can hold both, and then we can move from one to another.
Absolutely. And that's what will help you navigate from one to the other. Yes.
I'm in the cottage. I'm all green this week. Yes. Can you be in 2 different simultaneously? So what else, guys? I want to hear from a couple of people. Again, because I want you to be able to pinpoint and name yourself. Where are you? If you can't name the exact emotion, what quadrant? What's the color you find yourself in? Maybe now.
A lot of red and blue. Yes. So you're definitely into the unpleasant, uncomfortable side of that chart.
Red.
And with alternation of high energy, which would be the red, and low energy, which is the blue. So you see how energy also plays a part in here.
Green,
Yeah.
John said.
Yeah.
Also in webinar 2, we talked a little bit about people and recognizing how different people react to stress. Who goes into overachieving and who goes into the under. So that's the red and blue. Red can be like my anxiety, let's say with COVID-19. Now we're like month 3 and it looks like we're gonna work from home for the whole summer. Camps are canceled. So we can go into that anxiety mode where I can become really actually controlling and on point and achieving my goals, where other people go into underperforming. They can't get out of bed. They feel tired and exhausted. And knowing that as a leader for yourself, but also for your colleagues.
I love how what Heather is saying. At work, I go through all 4 daily, which kind of prompts me the question that we want to ask you next, which has to do with how do emotion affect the way that you perform. You see how we're tied in up now to what you do every day at work. So a little reflection for you.
Not only you perform, if you are a leader, I'm also interested, do you believe that the way you feel affects the way you evaluate other people's performance?
Yeah.
Absolutely, we're human first.
Yeah. These are the times where we really navigate. So you see how there's also an agility that we need to have, which is part of that resilience of navigating sometime in the same day or in the same meeting, same conversation among all the 4 of them. Yeah.
That's the part of regulation. So
Yeah.
choice, again, we go into this more and maybe we'll create a few, if you are interested, we might create another one of this. The self-awareness, the self-management, we go from self-awareness to self-management, and then we go to relationship and social awareness. So it always starts with me. I cannot recognize it in you if I don't have it in me. If I cannot regulate myself, I cannot regulate my people or my children, or I cannot help them regulate. So we have this in our training, right? It's like, how do you self-manage yourself? And then how do you move to social awareness? And
we mentioned at the beginning this duality, the double dimension of emotional intelligence. There's the self and then the others. So the ability of making the choice and the right choice that comes from that awareness, right? So it always starts with awareness. And then when you go into choice, then you're able to be that person. That's where the empathy comes from, which is now awareness of others. So this is just for you to kind of self-check with those questions that we wanted to add there.
And being intentional. So when you think of where you are right now, all of your relationships, working relationships, your colleagues, how do you want to be perceived during crisis?
And this is in your role as a leader, as a team leader, as the head of your department.
Adaptable, empathetic, right? And empathy comes up. It's like, how do we develop that empathy for people, but still have this very delicate dance between organizational needs and individual needs? And how do we meet both?
Right. Adaptable, collaborative, competent, Heather. Yeah, absolutely. Competent with both that IQ and EQ playing a part, empathetic, adaptable. So you see how we're really filling that gap that we mentioned at the beginning with that IQ, EQ. Without these skills, you can't adapt. You can't be whole as the leader making the right decisions for your team, for yourself and the team. Okay.
Here's one of our favorite tools. It comes from a Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and it's called the Ruler. And there are 5 steps to regulating emotions. And we've given you, like, when we go through our steps, right? One is recognizing emotions. And again, having the vocabulary, we don't have emotional literacy. When we come to a workforce, we usually use 3 emotions. I'm sad, I'm mad, and I am, I don't know, confused. Like 3, I'm either sad or I'm mad, or I don't know, I'm somewhere in between. So it's like, as a leader, having the emotional literacy to actually differentiate your emotions, right? Recognize.
And what I like about this, and the study, it comes from Mark Brackett. He is the professor at Yale. The interesting thing that he says that I particularly love about this model is that L of labeling, that literacy that Anya was referring to, is like the hinge. between the recognizing and understanding and the expressing and regulating. So you see how there's, without that pivot there, you really cannot go into that part of managing that emotion, which is expressing it and regulating it. So I love that.
So I'm going to add a little comment to that. It's like, yes, and labeling emotions for myself actually is one thing. And I find leaders struggle because they're actually afraid to label it inaccurately. What we always say, leaders dare to know. And if I'm in a conversation with you and we're having a one-on-one again, right? Or we're doing performance review and I say, Angela, what I'm hearing, you sound really overwhelmed. And Angela might say, actually, I'm not overwhelmed. I am angry or I'm annoyed. So guess what? Without my comment, we would not get there. So don't be afraid to label emotions, knowing that it will inspire someone else to actually maybe say, no, actually, I'm not angry. I'm tired. Or I'm not tired. I am frustrated. As leader, it's much better to say something where you're sensing where you're picking up and letting another person correct you. And you'll still, go 2 steps ahead from where you have been. I want to talk a little bit about causes and consequences. It's one of my favorite places of regulation. I want to understand, and of course, being an executive coach for many years, it helps having that coaching background with insight. What is causing this reaction in this person? As someone said, I have an employee who runs by their own rules. They don't listen. All I want them to here's how we are in this team. And this person just keeps going. What's causing that behavior? What are they trying to portray? What are they trying, what's the message they're sending? And what are the consequences? What impact does it have? Because often those people are not even aware of the impact that are happening, right? So understanding the causes and consequences. That's why there's a language of emotions, as I said. There's a disappointment, there's a frustration, there's injustice. So if I'm sensing that I'm picking up on anger and injustice, why is this person acting this way? Do they think that I'm treating someone else differently?
Yes.
Go one level deeper. It's what is causing this reaction in them versus oh, she's just always mad.
Which is what I want to tie to what I'm seeing in the chat. Jack is saying, I understand it, but I find myself giving it a pass, right? It's just, the empathy is there. Great work. You've come pretty far. And now what is missing is expressing it, and probably they do because they tell you excuses or reasons. It's up to you to decide. But then that really final crucial part of regulating is missing there, and how to help them really come through the other end and bring down that lid that we were talking about at the beginning so that they can carry on and do their best work. So that's exactly what we're saying, is that final step of regulation that is so important.
And when it comes to expressing emotions, I'm very passionate about diversity and inclusion work. I am someone, I do a lot of work around bias. So when it comes to expressing, also asking ourselves, what is appropriate in our company? And what is appropriate for men and what is appropriate for women? Because we all know women are not allowed to be angry, men are not allowed to be vulnerable. So it's what is an appropriate expression in our culture, in our company? What messages are we saying, right? And if people are afraid to admit that they're nervous about the project because they will be deemed unfit for the role. So it's what permission do we give each other to express? And then, of course, regulating effectively. Angela, can we speak a little bit about the effectiveness?
So hold on before we keep going, because we do have that practice here. Just very quickly, you may be aware of this already. When we'll have more time to go over this in the training and the consultation, there's several tools that we will bring forward for use as for the team and for yourself in how to regulate those emotions. Oh, okay, hold on. How to recover? What's going on? It's moving. Okay. So now we can go to the recovery. And then let's stay there.
In a box?
Right here. Okay. So this is the one tool that we thought very quick and easy, very powerful, even to just say, and you may think, oh, God, this is so naive. As a leader, as the head of that department, do I really make them breathe? Okay, so here's a language around that, because, okay, let's take a pause. right? Can you really focus on your breathing right now? It's probably shallow because you've been really driven by that emotion. You've been riding that emotion. So let's just take a pause. Focus on yourself. Let's imagine that we're really breathing a long inhale, and then take a pause, and then a long exhale. And then another pause before you breathe again. I'll give you a minute in silence. You can say in that conversation or with the team. And let's just reset. I like that word of resetting, right? So this is just one tool. It comes from the Navy SEAL. If it's good for the Navy SEALs before they go into combat, it's good for us in a boardroom, right?
We always say, right, it's like pause. If you can pause, you can really readjust yourself. Angela and I, we work with so many customers, right, and clients in corporate where it's like, well, I'm in the meeting right now. I cannot go for a walk. I cannot meditate. I cannot call my friend and vent, because those are all the tools, right? And for you to decide, like, what are my tools? So we have many, many different tools, but this is a quick way. And to do it with yourself, just take a pause. And even if you don't have to sometimes verbalize it, Angela said, if your teams need it, but for yourself, if you can just pause, and it will take you 16 seconds, it will change the way you...
And you probably have your own tools, so we'll skip through that for sake of time. We would love to know your tools. So Anya, let's go to resilience.
Yeah.
So the final step of that ladder that we saw earlier of how to regulate emotions is the resilience. And this is the definition of resilience: to bounce back smarter and stronger. And actually for Anya and I, we like the idea of really springing forward, right? Of propelling when you build that threshold, when you build that resilience, that agility to navigate those situations. Because we have people in the medical industry today, you probably know that the World Health Organization in 2018 admitted burnout as an official disease in the workplace. It's only related to the workplace. I had no idea about that. But the burnout is really the piling of stress, the augmenting of stress to the point that really inhibits the person and their ability. So this is where resilience comes in, of being able to build that threshold to respond to the situations, to that stress.
Because I also find with leaders, right, how often we see our employees that are going through the same thing, or the same two people that are having conflict over and over and over, and they're not learning anything. It's not becoming quicker, it's not becoming easier, and they're not really mastering the tools of like, how do I recover quicker? I have capacity, or I like to say resilience is having capacity to have difficult conversations, and you can build that muscle. You know how when you had to let go someone for the first time, and then second time, and then third time, and then 10th time. Again, how do we build that capacity to stay when we really want to get out? How do we stay? That's resilience to me.
And I know the leaders in this webinar love to think things in a matter of a quotient or a ratio, some kind of an index number. So if your team had an index number, because there's a resilience at a team level and a resilience at individual level. But if we were to take your team and the level of resilience of your team, right, what would that be? What it will be a capacity to recover quickly from difficulty, and how would that enhance their performance? If we were to raise that dial of resilience of your team, how would that enhance their performance? What would they be able to do?
And think about how much time you spend in conflicts and regulating emotions and toxic behaviors on your team and in your company. How much time is spent regulating behaviors?
Yeah. So just a few seconds of reflection. I know this is, now we're tapping into the foresight, right, of what possible, what's there, untapped potential. Yes.
And COVID-19 has taught us this lesson.
It's a necessity now, not a good to have.
Right, and how many of you said, I want to be able, like, I want to be adaptable. I want to be adaptable, because we don't know, like, this is the time of leadership. You cannot script it. You cannot predict it. Like, we don't know what's going to be in the week. So do we have the capacity to be what is and what arises, and have the knowledge and the tools to navigate what arises? Because people are going to go through waves, the waves of disappointment and anxiety and low performance and maybe high performance. And
right. Heather says something there very insightful. The issue are related to the amount of work. And these days, with people losing work and leaving the team, and the people left behind have to pick up that slack, right? Even more so. And so you see how the decisions that they make is they go into that avoidance. They feel overwhelmed. So those emotions of overwhelm, of frustration, of disappointment, of really being overstressed, that's where, remember, that lid, right, is totally up. They don't do their best work. They don't do their best thinking. And so having the tools to help the team, right, navigate and hear that word again, of responding to those emotions, of acknowledging them and coming together to help each other, to support each other, are the skills that are needed. Yeah.
And so many comments, right, about like performance. It really affects too, as I said, on organizational level, it really affects our performance. We waste time all the time. Yeah. And then on a personal level, it's a toxic culture where people don't feel happy. They don't know how to work with each other, so they go into silence. Like, why do we go into silence? Because we don't want to have difficult conversations, because it's easier for me to just do it on my own than to give you candid feedback and say, hey, here's what happened last week. I'm really sorry. This is how I took it. Can we talk? Can we recover? Can we talk about this and find a way to be together?
Yeah.
We don't have those conversations. We don't have the tools. We don't have the language, many of us.
And Julia was saying the clarity of how the team navigates sounds similar to establishing team norms and charters. Yes, and that is the form, that's the structure that you create for the team. There's that safety zone, those landlines, absolutely. We actually have a whole webinar on this, webinar number 1. But then there's the experience. Then there's the duality of that experience, right? And so regulations and ways to chart that, absolutely. And then there's that experience of the individuals themselves or the collective as a team, of what they create and they provide for one another. Yeah.
I see Megan says people don't have skills and language to have those conversations. I agree with you.
Absolutely.
Why we do these trainings with companies and teams, because as a team, we then bring a common language. Then you don't have an excuse to say, well, I've never been trained in this. We bring this into your organization so you can have a common shared language to be able to have these conversations. And in the training, when we do training, it's all about practicing. Like the next stage, I believe, like my dream is, and we're working on it, to create a virtual reality training where you come in and we trigger you and we help you recover. And we trigger you and we help you recover. And we trigger you and we help you recover. And we build that muscle where you can have not just recover in a way like, okay, I'm back at performance, but you actually recover with your heart, where you have empathy, when you're still kind and receptive. I can recover and be like, I'm back, but like someone says, I'll kill you with my kindness, versus like, I'm really back, like yeah. I'm ready to go. There's a difference.
There's so much to add to this that we really couldn't bring in only 45, 50 minutes, because we'll go into really the science of motivation, what really motivates, what really strikes that chord for people so they are intrinsically motivated in doing something and not coerced to do it. So
for your company, for your colleagues, what you see, we created a little slide, like what are the benefits of being trained in emotional intelligence? And again, as I said, there's one for you, whoever is on a webinar listening to the recording, you as a person, how can you train yourself in your own capacity? And then how can you help your colleagues, right? Or your leaders or your HR people to go through this type of training to really build the capacity. So, we talked about recognizing what do you need and how to ask for what you need to be effective. That's another leadership competency, knowing how to ask for help and what to ask for to help yourself recover, right? Triggers, responses. When we do some role play, we talk a lot about triggers and we've touched a little bit upon it. What is our immediate response? And I can, like, who goes into shutdown? Who goes into this? And what is the antidote of those toxic behaviors? Behaviors that are not serving us, our own career, our own progression, our own opportunities, but also not serving our teams and organizations.
And Heather, yes, to gain the respect with these, with disabilities, with these tools, right? It's a way to really open up and being able as the leader, as a supervisor, to be with them so that you meet you meet them where they are, and then you bring them where you want them to be. Right? Very key. Yeah.
So many questions, and we hear some like questions privately, and you can put a couple of them in the Q&A if you have right now. We have about 3 minutes left. We do want to offer you, if you are a leader, you're an HR, you're a person, you want to have a consult with us, but how do I even start these conversations? Like, here's where I am. That's what we often do, consult. It's like, I don't know how to scale it across organization. It's not a priority. When we talk about budgets, like, this is the priority. Like, if any time, like, this is the time, because we're losing people, we're losing our capacity to perform because we're anxious, we're overwhelmed. We cannot continue like this. So this is the time. Reach out to us. We can bring you individualized workshop for your specific team and challenges. To get feedback on it, and mastery practice, EQ mastery. How do we master the skills? So if you guys have any questions, we will send maybe slides with Terry. Feel free to reach out to Culture Crafters through WorkTango, or we'll send my email. We'll be happy to jump on a quick call with you. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer this. We apologize, it's been a little quick today just because there are some time constraints with logistics for this webinar, but we hope it was useful and valuable for you.
And maybe as you walk away from here, if you'd like to share with us, it would be really valuable for us. What is your takeaway from today? What is that one action that you think you can bring back to your team or for yourself when it comes to emotional intelligence and those tools that we have shared with you? Megan says it was very good. Thank you. You're very welcome, Megan. And thank you for keeping it interactive so that we can make it relevant.
I learned that I'm not alone with having trouble leading my team. Oh, hell no. Like, we're all in this. We're all in this together, and it is like unprecedented time right now. So I'm happy you got to see different comments. Thank you all so much for contributing to the chat. I feel like we need to go back and read it because there's so many like good things that you guys have shared. Yeah. I need our upper management understand these points. Yes, Brad. So that's why I said, let's create a consult. Let's jump on a call. We can help you. How do you talk about it with upper management? Because we have this struggle. People are like, well, I'm not a therapist. We don't need this. So we'd be happy to connect with you. Thank you. Terry, do you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Culture Crafters. Thanks, Angela. Thanks, Anya. It was amazing. I need to learn a new language now, my language of emotion. So better get studying. But we'll see everyone again next Thursday, same time. For another great session. So I'll send an email with the video and more information to learn more about this. But thanks everyone for joining, and thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.